I was just going to say, like, what a phenomenal explanation of your level of training. It's not just medicine, because I think some people who are tuning this in, they're like, oh, we're going to talk about tourniquets and gauze and sucking chest wounds. But it's like there's so many more layers to everything that comes into this to build you into a resilient, a field expedient and combat ready medic.
What's up, Vortex Nation? We're here, got a really good one ahead of us. And if you're watching on the video, the setup in here is a little bit different because actually Mr. Muckenhirn is to my left, not Mark. Mark is out hunting currently. I think that he heard DJ was coming. DJ Struntz was sitting across the table from myself. And last time DJ was here, he slapped a tourniquet on Mark. Mark felt very uncomfortable. And so anyways, I think that's why he picked this week to bounce specifically.
And no Eric.
And no Eric. Well, Eric is here, but Eric is
hiding.
He's also, yes, not really here. But anyway, also across the table from us, and DJ, you've been on the podcast once before, so if people go back and see the old Boats and Bows pod venture, he helped us figure out, a lot of backcountry or backwoods sort of trauma and preparedness. But also with DJ is James Davenport, and both you guys are with North American Rescue, and so both of you guys I'm blaming you. You're responsible for when I'm scrolling through Instagram and it's just a fine bluebird day and all of a sudden I see someone with a leg blown off or something like that.
It happens.
It does.
I'll take responsibility for that.
The thing is, it's graphic, but it's also real. So I know you guys aren't doing it all for the shock value. There's definitely a lot of learning there too. But
is there any that we're not doing for shock value?
Yeah, shock value always helps.
It does. So shock people out of their apathy.
I guess that's true. But James, why don't you? We'll have you introduce yourself here, and you also have most of the information on the topic that we're going to be talking about today, which is essentially getting into the life of a special forces medic. And is that the right term?
Yeah,
that's kind of like a general term, right? Because there's a lot of
special operations is the more general term.
Okay.
Special forces speaks specifically to Army Green Berets, but it's people interchange them so much now that it's hard to know one from the other from the civilian side of things. Like, what's the difference in a SEAL and a Green Beret? Good hair.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Noted. Should have known.
Noted.
Yeah. But introduce yourself for the listeners out there.
So, James Davenport. I have been with NAR for a few years now. I was a longtime fan of their equipment, and clearly some of it has been used on me before. Came to work at NAR after I retired from active duty in 2016, and kind of got into the Army by happenstance.
9/11
being the happenstance.
Okay.
My dad spent 32 years in the Army, was a Normandy Ranger, big shoes to fill, or big set of underwear to fill, and graduated. He didn't want me doing that, so I went on to be a firefighter paramedic, did that for 10 years, and then 9/11 happened, and I couldn't just sit on the sidelines. So enlisted shortly thereafter, and then took off on the grand adventure of being a Green Beret medic.
Okay.
So
I didn't realize that prior to you had the paramedics experience already. So what I'm curious makes somebody, what do you have in you that makes you want to do the job of patching people up in just traumatic situations? Because I got to say, we did a class down here. We've done 2 here in the last 2 days when you guys have been here. Really informative stuff, really good stuff to know. But man, I don't know what it is about, me, and I know I'm not obviously the only one, but when we start showing pictures and we start talking about arteries and veins and blood coming out and, all these kinds of lacerations and whatnot, I get a little weak at the knees, a little queasy. It's
a calling.
Yeah.
I mean, quite frankly, I thought I wanted to be a trauma surgeon. I still want to be a trauma surgeon when I grow up. I'm just running out of time. But graduated high school, went on to college, did the baseball scholarship thing, and with a full intent on being an being a doctor. Was a biology, chemistry major, and then the end of my sophomore year, lost my scholarship, had to have something to pay for college, so I'm like, well, I'll go be a firefighter. And so got started at that and kind of just didn't look back, like until, quite frankly, 9/11, and then it just seemed like a natural progression from just a tailboard firefighter, somebody rides backwards in the fire truck, the dude holding the hose, basically, to become an EMT and then a paramedic, and then it just comes natural. The medicine piece, like I don't fight it. I don't spend a particular amount of time studying like some other people do. It truly is a gift that I've recognized that I have, and I use it to the best of my ability to make a difference in the world. A resilient citizen, as some might call it. So
you just enjoy kind of seeing the way it all goes together and works, the whole human body and all that stuff. I mean, like when we were doing that class, some of the stuff that you're bringing up, all I know is it's bleeding a lot, slap a tourniquet on it. But you're talking about, where the arteries are, where the nerves are, how they all run in parallel to one another, how the muscles are all interacting with one another. It's complicated stuff under our hoods.
It is.
That somehow, it always baffles me, like, you have car troubles, the car's little engine light comes on, it knows what's wrong with it, you got to ask it what's wrong with it, but it's like, the same thing. When we have a problem with our bodies, we got to go see another person to figure out what's wrong with us, because it's like, it's amazing how much our bodies do without us having any knowledge of what it's doing,
Right. Well, I don't know if I mentioned it this morning. I certainly did yesterday, the whole intelligent design, which is a controversial topic of in itself, that somebody created everybody and had specific purposes in mind when it happened. And as I was talking this morning, with respect to where the arteries lie in the body, in the upper arms and the upper legs, they're well protected inside of the musculature of those extremities, in the same places they are on other predators like lions and tigers and bears. Oh my! But they're on the inside, so that we're capable of conducting warfare and being reasonably protected, from slashing of swords and this, not like going back to the samurai days, but they're on the inside, where they are reasonably protected against everything, obviously, except for an IED blast. So,
when an IED goes off,
you're especially when you're spread eagle over top of it, it's hard to take in.
No, it's easy to take in. It's hard to do it.
Yeah.
You don't really have much thought on that one.
Huh. Yeah, I suppose you might be right. But
I have no information to add to the subject.
I'm
can't say.
This is just conversation with James, but
we could get into that whole piece later, but people are like, how do you make jokes about being blown up? I'm like, I can either laugh about it or cry. Tomorrow's my live date.
Yeah, which is pretty incredible.
No kidding.
Can you so explain what that is?
So on 28 October 2012 at 8:06 in the morning, I stepped on a improvised device that had long-lasting consequences to my body. Man. And I'll be here local when that takes place tomorrow. But it's like it's replaced my birthday, quite frankly.
Wow.
No longer celebrate my birthday. My daughter does. She sends me a card for my birthday, but I think more about my live date because I had a choice in some of that and didn't really have a choice in being born. So
that's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Preparation that went into my training, both as a medic and just as a war fighter in general, if you will, has taken over several times and resulted in me still being here at the end of the day. So, not to mention that I'm just a stubborn SOB and refuse to die, which absolutely helps.
Yeah.
So
amazing. Man, like you said, there's so many things we can go into.
Where's the birthday cake?
Phenomenally. I feel bad now, because if you would have told me that we had this date coming up.
We'll go out to the warehouse later and
have a birthday party.
Sure, yeah. We'll grab a couple beers after this. But, man, there's so many things to get into, but I think, being along with the topic, I mean, certainly that's part of the topic because you had that event happen to you while you were in this job of being, special operations medic. But can you go into explain, we'll get it a little bit, some more of a foundation before we really dive into it. So you mentioned how it's kind of complicated. We were even having a little bit of a conversation before we got started. Special operations medic can kind of be a lot of different things. I was even trying to look it up myself. There's a lot of, maybe there's not even a lot of it, and this is also just part of what I misunderstand, but there's different types of special operations. You have Green Berets, you've got SEALs, you've got Reinforced Recon, the Air Force has their kind of thing, PJs and all that stuff. And I think there's medics within each one of those. Are there medics that are even bouncing around between all of them? And how does that all work?
Well, all of Special Operations Command has medics or corpsmen specific to their unit.
Okay.
And so Special Operations Medic is just a huge umbrella term that encompasses all of us.
Okay.
I mean, by and large, Green Beret medics or Army Special Forces medics receive the lion's share of the training longer than anybody else. When I was in the course, the first half of the course was called Special Operations Combat Medic, and then the second half of the course is called Special Forces Medical Sergeant's Course. Mm-hmm. So your SEALs, Rangers, Green Berets, Civil Affairs medics, some other support medics are all in the same course for the first roughly 6 months. And then we separate the wheat from the chaff, and the SF guys go forward. So every now and then you'll have a SEAL in the group, but it was few and far between at the time. The class behind me didn't have one. Our class had one, and the class ahead of us didn't have any in the class itself. But that SEALs, that is. And so what at the time the SEALs were doing is they would send guys to the SOCM, or Special Operations Combat Medic portion. They would return to their unit, and then once they made a certain rank, then they would return them to the schoolhouse to take the second half of the course. Mm-hmm. That way it ensured that they got something out of the course at least, as opposed to it taking a year to create a Green Beret medic out the gate for just the medical portion of the training.
Yeah. Now, you're not only having to do that year of training, like, do you have to become, like, Green Beret Special Forces first, and then you become then a medic within that? Or how does that all work, too? Because I always think to myself, I mean, when you talk about medics, especially like what you did, I can't I don't know. I have a hard time thinking of anything that's, like, more scary of a person to have to run into if I were on the wrong side than somebody like that, because not only do they know how to make holes, but they know how to patch them up. They know how you work, they know more about me than I know about me. And that's a lot of training and just a lot of know-how, and man, it's crazy. So what all goes into that? So
we all, whether you're approaching being a Green Beret as an officer, or you want to be a weapons guy, an engineer, a comms guy, or a medic, you all go to selection together. Okay. And then based on a bunch of tests that they give you there, and the ASVAB, your score on the ASVAB, and a couple other things, they decide what you're probably best at. And by and large, the guys who do the best on those standardized tests become medics. And then you can be a medic or you can not be an SF, which is kind of weird because there's a lot of guys that do not enjoy being a medic, but that was their only way onto a team, and so they did it. But that's different than guys who enjoy medicine. You know, guys on a team usually say it comes in one of two pieces. You're either a brainiac medic, or you're a tactician that's horrible at medicine and nobody relies on you for it. So other than just having to fill that slot in a team, I think I'm a little bit of both in that, not just a medic. I went to sniper school, attended a whole bunch of weapons courses and advanced targeting courses and intelligence courses. So I wanted to be a well-rounded medic as opposed to just being well-rounded. So
yeah, because the responsibilities that he would have on a team are not just like you do medicine. That's like
right
at the very end of the list is you do medicine.
When
he has everything else, you know, on top of that is like, yeah, he was their sniper. He may be, you know, whatever else is required from the team because it's a 12-person team.
Right. Human intelligence, I had a huge piece of that pie. Like as DJ was saying, it's a 12-man team led by a captain, a warrant officer, if the team is lucky or unlucky in some cases, and a master sergeant, which is the senior enlisted guy. And then you have an intelligence sergeant who had to have been one of the other 4 specialties before moving on to being the intelligence NCO, and then 2 of each, weapons, engineer, medic, and communications. One's a senior, one's a junior. And then there's intermixed responsibilities between those 2 for each of the specialties. But the medics generally share most of all of it, you know. So
yeah. So, I mean, if we, you know, you look at the title of this podcast, and you're like, oh, yeah, we're going to talk about a guy who's a medic. Like, he just does medic stuff. I mean, we talk about a guy, you know, you're looking into the life of somebody who basically had to learn it all.
Yeah. Well,
you spent a lot of time behind glass on a long gun.
Yeah.
A lot of time.
A lot of time. The rotation that I was injured in 2012 where I lost my leg, I spent a disproportionate amount of time until being blown up the second time, like whacking dudes from a distance with either...
after the first explosion?
Well, the first one happened on the 14th of October of 2012. Like, yeah, it's past, but I got it. It was in a vehicle. We drove over some daisy-chained 107 millimeter rocket rounds that detonated aft of the front tire on the vehicle. I was sitting in the passenger front seat. We call it the TC seat or truck commander. And then I ended up with a big piece of steel in the back of my left leg that had to be surgically removed. And then there was a gaping hole there that I woke up every morning and packed with gauze, had to remove it the next day and repack it. Not like packing when we talk about an arterial wound in a junctional area of the body, junctional being where limbs attach to the torso, and using that packing to stop bleeding. In this instance, it's used to fill a cavity so that the cavity granulates, so that tissue granulates from the inside out, and you don't end up with it being closed on the outside, and then fluid filling that cavity, and then it becoming an infection. That's the way a lot of bad infections start overseas. So it was like 1/4-inch wide gauze that you loosely pack in there, and its whole goal is just to keep that cavity open so that it can granulate from the inside out, or higher from tertiary intent.
So these 2 events occurred 2 weeks apart.
Yeah, 14 days, 8 hours, and 11 minutes.
So you were then operational post-injury.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I tried to... so we flew... there was a firefight that ensued after the vehicle got blown up. A little bit later, a helicopter came and picked me and another guy up that was in the same vehicle. It was his 5th IED incident, and he was a little rattled mentally.
Yep.
And so, and then they flew us to Tarin-Kau, Afghanistan, which is northeast of Kandahar, about an hour flight. And the SEALs were in charge of the commando mission there. And so they dropped us off, and, you know, it took a few hours for them to, you know, clean me up and patch me up and decide what they were going to do with it. And as soon as I had an opportunity to leave, I went right back down the flight line, tried to commandeer a helicopter to take me back. And the SEAL Command Master Chief came out, and he's like, "Are you Davenport?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "I just got a phone with your command sergeant major. He said you were probably down here on the flight line looking for a helicopter to get a ride back, and I was supposed to stop you." So 2 weeks later, when I got blown up the second time, he came in the hospital as I arrived, making jokes about why I wasn't a Navy SEAL, and I told him I didn't have good hair. and he took his hat off, and he's just as bald as I am. It was an interesting moment.
So my curiosity here comes from the level of injury that you received. I mean, it sounded like it was catastrophic on the first go.
Yeah, it was fairly. I mean, it was fairly bad. It was bad.
Yeah,
giant chunks of steel aren't really meant to go in your leg.
No.
So is that atypical or is that typical? Like, considering your line of work, you encounter this incident. You had to have something surgically removed from you. You're doing a pack every day, and then you're out back in the field. Is that uncommon, or because you're an uncommon man, that kind of comes with the territory?
I think I don't know. That's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
Like, if I say it's not common, then I sound like I'm something superhuman, and that's certainly not the case. But I like to think that, and the way I rationalize going back to my team is they didn't have a medic.
Yeah.
My team sergeant had been a medic, spent some time over behind the fence at CAG, and then when he got promoted to E8, which is a master sergeant, to take a team, he had to leave and take a team, and so he came to 7th Group and took a team, and that's where I ended up.
And he plays into the story later. Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. But like I try to put myself in their shoes. If like they were without a medic until I got back, and I couldn't have my guys going out on mission without a medic. Regardless of what had happened to me, it was a scratch.
Right. So
happens.
Yeah, has one hell of a scratch.
Yeah, it was. Right. I mean, it was a big scratch, but so and it bled pretty substantially. Not like we were talking about in the class this morning. But
was it tourniquet worthy?
Oh no. It originally applied one because I didn't know how bad it was because I can't quite see the entire back of the leg.
Sure.
Right. Which is good. Otherwise, there would be something seriously wrong with the front side of the leg if I can see the back side from the front side. So,
right.
I didn't realize it was your left leg that got hit both times.
Oh yeah. That leg has taken a beating.
I'm guessing though, back in he described himself, because how tall are you?
5'8",
4'3".
And you described yourself as being 240 pounds back in that day, so you had a fair amount of built-in body armor.
Yeah, I was a big guy. Man. Thank God. Not for
a small guy like a little string bean like me.
It would have the second blast, the one that I stepped on, would have disarticulated your leg at the hip.
That's good to know. I'm not going to drive over any AD soon.
No, I hope not.
Forgive the morbidity, but that is a fascinating thing to think about.
Yes.
Like your build quality was such that you maintained integrity after the blast.
Intelligent design.
Yeah.
Strong men are hard to kill and are generally more useful.
Yeah.
What is that saying about us, Jimmy? I mean, he just said we would have been disarticulated.
I'm trying.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Neither one of you go to places where that stuff takes place, generally speaking, unless you're going to Portland recently. So
True. Man, so you bring up that kind of shifts gears a little bit into, I'm imagining, just an intense amount of physical conditioning and strength training and all that's necessary when you have a profession like this. I'm also picturing just an immense amount of training your brain as well. And you even alluded to the fact earlier on that all the training that you had came into play in a lot of really crucial and mega high stress situations. So what does, and obviously this gets into the life of a special operations medic, what does that life look like in terms of preparing? Because I can't imagine. I remember, having some family, some friends, some people that we know through Vortex. They just discuss the training that they go through in order to go on missions and be, an accurate shooter and understand tactics and this, that, and the other thing. You're also then having to figure out all these things, train about how the human body works, which is a complexity in and of itself. Then you're doing strength training. Did you figure out a way to fit 48 hours into a day?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you just don't sleep.
That's the answer.
I don't know that's always the answer. Being downrange is just a lot of work. And there's no two ways about it. You, depending on what your mission is, dictates your workload. But when, the rotation prior in Iraq, like, it was intelligence drives operations. And so I was either talking to people to define targets so that the team could go hit, or I was hitting them with the team. And the intelligence guys at the time on a team would, be up 20 hours every other day because we had to do all, like, there's a crap ton of work that goes into that intelligence piece. And then, of course, I'm not going to collect the intelligence and then not go hit the target with the team. That's crappy. But so while everybody else is, like, racked out getting some sleep, like, I'm still writing reports,
Okay.
Because, like, the way we get intelligence is, like, we pay for it, same way police officers do to a degree. And that money has to be justified somewhere. And so that goes into the report, how you met, what was talked about, any abnormalities about the person you're meeting with. Is it a one-time deal? Are you meeting with them multiple times? Do you pay them for stuff regularly, or is it just when they bring you intelligence? I mean, there's a lot of work goes into that piece.
Okay. Yeah.
And usually the intelligence NCO on the team manages the whole of the intelligence and then tells me what he needs to fill gaps, and then I go out and find people to fill those gaps.
Okay.
So it's a huge, huge piece. Like,
yeah.
And I mean, that in and of itself is a very labor-intensive job.
Well, and there's no way that lifestyle sort of quote unquote ends or whatever, or slows down when you get back home, because it sounds to me like when you're downrange, there's really not a chance to. There's not really a chance. It sounds like to just go and, like, work out, or maybe there is. I don't know. You just make time.
Yeah.
But when you get back home, it sounds like that's where you do all the preparation, and then you go on essentially. I don't know how long you were deployed for, but that's like, some people talk about, oh yeah, you've got game day or whatever, and it's like, yeah, you played in a game for 3 hours on a weekend, and then
Right.
your game day is a couple months long. Is that what it looks like though when you get back? Is it still just you get back home and you're like, oh, yep, we're still running 20-hour days?
Yep. Well, I mean, you get home, you take some downtime, spend some time with the family, decompress, or try to, and then you go right back into a training cycle, getting ready for the next rotation. And you're either going someplace like South America, Africa, that are non-traditional combat rotations, so that you're still busy. You're just doing a different part of the job, and then come back and then start the cycle all over again. It's really SOF as a whole in the command has been run ragged, and to a large part, 7th Group has taken the biggest brunt of the casualties in Afghanistan. I mean, it was to the point where we stopped focusing on South America. That's South and Central Americas, who 7th Group was our area of responsibility, but that focal point kind of got mixed up in right after the war on terror kicked off, and it was all feet on the ground in Afghanistan. I got a few trips to Iraq, but that was when I was still in 20th Group doing the National Guard SF thing, which is not the National Guard, like model of a weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the summer kind of thing. I have more rotations and trips than a lot of active duty dudes that I graduated with, and schools for that matter, just because I was either deployed, getting ready for deployment, coming back from deployment, or going to a school. Like,
yeah.
I lived as a geo bachelor for a long time. But I wouldn't, like, I took a leave of absence. Like, after 9/11 happened, when I enlisted, I had a little girl on the way. She was born the 29th of September, 2001. And so I waited for her to show up, and get her and make sure everything's taken care of at the house. And I wouldn't, not that I'm not missed when I'm not there, you know, but like get everything ready for me to be gone for a bit. And so I took a 5-year hiatus from the fire department to go take care of all the training and become operational. And then called the fire department. I'm like, hey guys, I just got back from my first rotation. I know I'm supposed to come back to work, but I'm not. I'm gonna keep doing this SF thing. And I had just been promoted to lieutenant 6 months before I left for the Army. And people are like, that's kind of crappy that you'd take that knowing you were leaving. I'm like, that's a huge pay increase. You pay on sand. Like, I'm trying to get mine. Like, I was about to take a huge cut in pay from a lieutenant paramedic at the fire department to specialist in the Army, making $34,000 a year. You know, but the poor guy that had to fill my shoes for that almost 4 years before I resigned, he was mad too because he didn't get promoted. He's just filling it as an engineer working in a lieutenant's job, thinking that, well, you know, when I come back that he'd just get bumped back down or find another slot. And then he eventually got promoted once they figured out I'm not coming back. But, I mean, at the time, you couldn't do anything about it. Guys were taking on, you know, responsibility of fighting a war that the nation needed us to fight. Yeah. And thank God for the employer or ESGR, the Guard Reserve, as almost like an insurance for the federal government. It's like you can't fire guys that deploy, you know, in defense of their nation. But, I mean, it was steady. First trip was to South America after, like, I graduated the SF qualification course, took a week off, deployed. And that started what would then be, you know, my time as an SF medic until 2016 when I retired.
What was the hardest part of your training?
Ooh, hardest part of training. SEER.
SEER, okay.
Yeah. Like, we all go, or all Green Beret students that are in the Q course do everything together. You know, like, it's medics, comms guys, weapons guys, officers, a whole 9 yards, does all the field problems together, just like a team would. Like, you're all learning together, and then you split up and go do your individual job piece. Well, everybody else is 13 weeks except for medics, and we're at 56 weeks. Oof. And so dudes had graduated the course, gone on 2 deployments before I ever got out of the course. Yeah. But
severe. So for those not familiar, for SEER, for those not familiar with, is survive, evade, resist, escape.
Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
And so that was pretty tough for you. Is it this? Like, I remember family going through, you know, in serving and saying that they were going to SEER school. Is it? But they weren't Green Berets or anything like that. They were in a different branch. Is it the same SEER school for everyone, or is it like, oh, you're this guy, so your SEER school is going to look like this, and you're this guy, so your SEER school? So
it's different.
It is. Okay.
Yeah, there's multiple levels of SEER. Starts at
of pain.
SEER 8, multiple levels of pain.
Sounds
yeah,
like.
That's a great way to put it. Both physical and mental pain. Like, you really, if you're there to learn, you learn a lot about yourself and where your breaking points are. I remember getting questioned by an adversarial person, and he brought up my daughter. And it was one of those days, I'm like, lip starts quivering, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy's going to make some comment about my daughter, and I'm going to go high and right on his backside right here, you know, with people on the other side of a two-way mirror watching this thing go down, and be like, oh my God, you know. But I managed to control myself right then. But like, I've watched some weird stuff go down. We had one guy. Well, let me back up and say, when I went to SEER school, like, it was just as MySpace was becoming huge, right? So
noted.
A while ago.
Okay.
Right? And one of the guys, so if you have a profile, when you show up SEER school, like SEER level C that special operations guys go to and pilots, but when you show up, the intel people that work at the school have already researched you. So if there's something out there to find, they're going to find it. And some people get questioned about some of that stuff. And there was a guy in the class who found out that his wife was cheating on him through pictures of her with another dude, like 4 layers deep in other people's profiles.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so they've got him in what they call the fishbowl, where it's an instructor and there's cameras watching, kind of like it is here. And
wow,
that
would suck.
The
I was
instructor.
about to say, yeah, there's no like, we'll let him off on that one since it's just school. It's no.
Like tossed a picture down in front of him and just stared at him. Guy's like, and then his lip starts quivering. He's like, I'm going to need a minute. He goes, you're not getting a minute. You're in captivity. And then it's like, is he the only one? How many other, you can't keep your wife happy? Like, I mean,
man,
like it lasts.
Oh yeah,
hard.
Back.
Like didn't let up. Like
Yikes.
he started crying, and the rest of us were like,
that's like
in
real
my-
life version of, isn't that in Jarhead, the movie?
Yeah.
Something like
Right.
that happens, except in a video or whatever. What were you going to say, Ryan?
I was just going to say, like, what a phenomenal, I guess, explanation of your level of training. It's not just medicine, because I think some people who are tuning this in, they're like, oh, we're going to talk about tourniquets and gauze and sucking chest wounds. But it's like there's so many more layers to everything that comes into this to build you into a resilient, a field expedient and combat ready medic, because the trauma that you're going to see, emotional and physical, is going to be just astronomical.
yeah. SF medics or Green Beret medics are wholly different than the rest of special operations community medicine. Like Ranger medics are medics first, and everything else and nothing else second, quite frankly. I mean, they're like, they've got other little ancillary jobs, but none of it replaces them being a medic, right? That is foremost. In Army Special Forces, like, I mean, I wear all the hats all the time, all at the same time. I could be hands deep in somebody fixing them, to calling in air weapons teams to drop close air support on a target that we're hitting, or bad dudes that, might have a team pinned down, to collecting intelligence, to fixing people's pay problems, to, I mean, it is huge.
It's kind of funny that I just brought up, before we entered into this podcast, I brought up that I watched the movie True Lies. According to Adrian and Pete, told me I had to in one of these last.
We talked with
pod
Arnold
mentions.
Schwarzenegger. And,
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, it's a great
Jamie
movie.
The old
Lee Curtis.
school. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
people
amazing.
watch these movies and they see Arnold Schwarzenegger where he whips out a pistol and he shoots, some dude 150 yards away, and then he gets on a sniper rifle and he snipes somebody with ultimate precision. Then he runs over and he jumps in a Harrier jet and he flies the Harrier jet all over. Then whatever. He basically knows how to do everything. He's a one-man wrecking machine. And it's people watching like, oh yeah, it's Schwarzenegger, it's Hollywood, whatever. We get it. No, people like that exist. That's what you had to be. You had to be the guy who could.
Well, I wouldn't. No.
It sounds
No.
like you're the True Lies Schwarzenegger.
No.
He was more buff.
Yeah.
He's like, don't compare me to
Yeah,
Schwarzenegger.
Arnie was looking a little
Like,
small in that
he-
movie, kind of like us.
Yeah. I had better legs. They were, when you're that short, it's easy to be
Bomb-proof.
right. Like, I mean, he's a tall dude.
Yeah.
I mean, to be a bodybuilder, at least for the time period that he got started, he was at the top of his game.
Yeah.
But, I hate, like, people be like, I saw such movie, man. What's that like? I'm like, it's nothing like the movie, man.
Oh, I'm sure it's absolutely nothing. But I mean, the skill set that you had to hold, though, I have a hard time sometimes going from checking emails to making lunch. It's like, oh well, I'm switching gears from writing something to making a sandwich, and you're having to switch gears from patching somebody up to now having to engage in a gunfight. That's just typical day.
I've got a question about the evolution of combat medicine in the 15 years that you were doing this. What did you see change in like operating in
How much time do we have?
Yeah, I mean, like we talk about IEDs. I remember being a very young person and knowing guys that were like upperclassmen, seniors that were enlisting, and then going over in the first waves and into the invasion of Baghdad and that kind of thing. We started hearing about IEDs.
Yeah,
and it's not like IEDs were foreign on the battlefield, but
no.
now it was the tactic, and I imagine that training for that kind of thing in that kind of environment, but also doing operations in South and Central America. I mean, these two different places, these two different biomes that you're operating in, does combat medicine apply differently there, or is, I guess, like this huge picture of combat medicine and how you did it, and what changed from 2001 to 2016? Like, was anything a full reversal, like a 180? We used to do this, now we do this because of this, or is it too situational and there's 140,000 different circumstances that can come up and turn the whole thing upside down?
Well, I mean, medicine is constantly in flux,
Sure.
right? Like what we think is true today, we may find data to support the exact contrary. And
Look at COVID.
I was about to say, we're in 2020. I think we know a
Well,
lot about how medicine can change.
And what I was thinking, what brought this up is, like, I was thinking about CPR certification. I think I became CPR
talked
certified.
about that earlier today.
When I think it was like 15 or 16, and it was breath compressions. And now there's zero precedence on breathing, none whatsoever.
Only for drowning.
Okay, right. And
rescue breathing.
Yeah.
And now you taking it to 11 in context here, I'd love to know, like, what was the most polarized thing that you saw happen?
So most polarized. That's a good question. I'm gonna have to think about that one for a minute. So while my brain is processing that piece, everybody assumes that going through the SF medic course as a paramedic with 10 years experience would be, people are like, oh man, it must be pretty easy. I'm like, no, I had a bunch of bad habits I had to fix.
Yep.
Like, I mean, we had a PA fail out, a physician's assistant could not reverse himself.
Sure.
I'm trying to find other words. You know what I was going to say, don't you?
That was well done, James. I was waiting for a beep.
Sorry.
Unbeep himself.
Ladies and gentlemen, this man is a professional orator as well.
Yes. Yes. The biggest change. So military medicine as a whole, and I mentioned this the past couple of days when I hear teaching your guys about being able to care for casualties, is not situational. Like, principles of medicine apply whether you're bleeding to death from an extremity wound in combat after stepping on an IED, or being shot, to having a leg severed from a motorcycle accident or an industrial accident, to active shooter incidents, right? It's that application that changes, right? So, like with the tourniquet in specific, they're often not the only way to deal with a bleeding issue, life-threatening hemorrhage. It's the most expedient way to deal with it while you're being shot at, right? Like, there's a ton of techniques that you could use to stop bleeding from an extremity. Not kneeling on people.
Oh, yeah.
That is some shenanigans.
I remember we were doing some Tourniquet Tuesdays. Instagram got
they're heated about it.
They got mad at us when we didn't kneel on somebody's pelvis when we put a tourniquet on their leg.
Why do you need to? So, 240 pounds. In kit, I'm almost 400 pounds.
Yeah.
Anybody in this room want me kneeling on their pelvis?
No, sir.
All right.
No, especially not if I just got, like, blowed up, you know?
Right. There was a study, and there's been several of them done in the past couple of years, looking at specificity of manual diagnostic tools, I guess you could say, or manual maneuvers to diagnose in the field an open pelvic fracture.
Okay.
13% of fourth-year surgical residents at Walter Reed, only 13% were successful at diagnosing an open pelvic fracture manually. And you want
in a nice, calm, controlled environment.
Right?
No bullets whizzing by.
Spa music playing in the background.
Right. Nurses like massaging you while you're right, and then the idea that, I'm just going to run on and drop 400 pounds worth of weight on your pelvis, not knowing what's happened to it, right? Yeah. Like if it's a simple, got a gunshot wound to the leg, well, then just put a tourniquet on it, right? Like people spend more time dilly-dallying with the leg or an arm trying to figure out how to kneel on it and put a tourniquet on at the same time than if they'd have just put the tourniquet on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
Well, and you were saying, too, I remember in the class, you were saying, well, some people would say, well, if I have my knee on, then it's temporarily stopping the blood flow, and then if I have to kind of interrupt my tourniquet application process to send some rounds down range, at least I still have the knee on there. So then, and you were saying, just pick one. Kind of don't half-ass one thing or two things, kind of whole-ass one thing.
Right. It's like you see videos or pictures, a guy will have either his pistol out or a carbine pinned underneath his arm, have a hold of somebody's body armor and be walking backwards, dragging a casualty, trying to pull security.
It looks heroic. I mean,
it does.
It looks awesome.
A great image.
For the gram, it's a great, people are like,
saving that guy and he's shooting bad dudes at the same time.
Yeah, it's the whole deal.
I mean, it's like doing jumping jacks and putting effective fire on target. Can somebody do it? Probably. Can you do it consistently? No. Like people would pay to see somebody jumping up down on a trampoline. They get in that jumping pause, like your expiratory pause, where you breathe in, pause, breathe out, with the jumping on the trampoline and be like, whoop, right? Like, but nobody does that in combat.
Right.
And I hear people use the example, well, like you used just a minute ago. Well, what if somebody comes around the corner in the middle of a tourniquet application and then I have to fire? Well, then fire, right? But that's, again, wholly different. Like, what are you doing with your rifle or your pistol while you're putting a tourniquet on?
I guess I don't
know. Not paying it, yeah.
Right, like people game these things and they bring up these such odd
what ifs
instances of what ifs that they back themselves into a corner with patient care, and then they can't get out of the argument.
Mm-hmm.
Like we'll just kneel on the pelvis. Okay. Like you carrying a CT machine around in your pocket? Because, my pelvis was fractured in 8 places.
Right.
And, if somebody had knelt on one or both sides of my pelvis where I was clearly bleeding from both iliac arteries, that would have been the end of me.
So
my goodness,
we've been dancing around his injury a bit. So why don't we just play that hopscotch game? You lose.
DJ Sam, I'm glad you brought up, because you're tight with James and you hang out with him all the time. Meanwhile, I'm over here like, how do you ask a guy, hey, what was it like getting blown up? I just don't.
You just ask it.
Yeah.
That's a fair point.
Right.
Sometimes you just gotta ask.
And he can tell you to go, pound sand. I'm not going to tell you about it. Or he'd be like, yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
I think it's therapeutic to talk about it, people. There are people that don't want to talk about it. I don't know. I spent a lot of time at Walter Reed and saw a lot of people messed up. And I spent a lot of time in the OR doing anesthesia and scrubbed in as a third set of hands in the OR working on other wounded vets. And I thought it was all therapeutic. The best thing for me was realizing that I still have a place.
Yeah.
That missing a leg at the knee on one side. And when I made the joke about almost disarticulating me at the hip, it all but ripped my right leg off at the hip. I was split literally, that inguinal fold that we talked about in the class where the tourniquet, you're looking to put the tourniquet initially, is I was split completely from the inside all the way up to literally the top of my femur. And the only thing holding it on was a muscle.
So talk us through how that took place. You were just on a nice walk smelling poppies.
Yeah.
Right? It's Afghanistan countryside.
Seems like the thing to do.
I had a glass of red wine, walked out the southern gate of the compound, marijuana bushes as tall as the ceiling is here for 50, 75 yards. It was amazing. But, and had turned and was headed down an alleyway and stepped on a device that would change my life forever. I'd always wondered, what it'd be like in combat, as a student. I think if you are in a combat arms field and haven't thought about what that's going to be like, you've probably chosen the wrong profession, right? Like, and then I was like, what's it going to be like to be deployed? Or what's it going to be like to be on a team? What's it going to be like to be deployed? What's it going to be like, this, that? Because I came in as an 18 X-ray in the Guard, in the National Guard, that is. 18 X-ray is the enlistment option, allows guys to come from the street straight into Special Forces. Thought about going to Ranger Regiment, falling in my dad's shoes, and then I'm like, nope. At 30 years old, 18-year-old pees on my toothbrush. That's probably going to be the last time he pees on anything with his
current setup.
Yeah, with his current hardware. So anyway, like I would think about those things, and then the first time I was deployed, I'm like, oh, well, so that's what that's like. And first time I heard, whiz crack come past my head, I'm like, that's not too bad. And then I'm like, and then inevitably I'm like, I wonder what's going to be like if I'm injured, And the only thing that I really concerned myself with was I knew how to take care of myself. Again, the only thing reasonable that somebody's going to care for themselves out of their IFAC with, and it shouldn't be in their IFAC, it should be someplace they get to with both hands, but is their tourniquet, right? You're not going to pack your own wounds, put chest seals on yourself. Probably less than 0.1% of guys in SOF would ever put a needle in their own chest. But, and so I'm like, wonder what's going to be like when I have to care for myself the first time, or, so forth and so on. And then it was, the only thing I was concerned with is not being a little bitch. Can we leave that in?
We'll leave that
we'll
one
leave
in.
that one in.
That
okay.
one, yes, because that makes the story. It's
right.
A very integral part.
Right. I don't want the dudes on the team not to see me cry. Like, I give two new nannies about that. I'll probably cry at some point during the interview. That doesn't bother me in the least. But not being viewed as a warrior or going out like a punk would, oh my gosh, that would be worse than, quite frankly, dying.
Because, all that time you've spent in training and in everything that you had up until that moment, that's all, like, a lot of it's trust building.
Oh,
with your team.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost that much or more that you're putting into your team as you are putting into yourself.
Right. Well, and you prepare them as much for combat as you prepare yourself.
Yeah.
As a medic, like, you're not only responsible for the physical care, but psychological well-being, emotional well-being. I have worked on team dudes' families. They would bring, I've had team members bring their kids and their wife to me and ask me to look at them because I don't want to take them to the family doctor because they don't trust them the way they do their medic. And I know guys that are completely the opposite. They don't want to have anything to do with medicine. Anyway, get off on a tangent. So walking down, taking this stroll with the glass of red wine in the marijuana fields of Kashgar, Afghanistan, and step on a device that would forever change me. Now I'm going to start crying. Severed the device, tossed me a little ways through the air, severed my left leg about mid-tibia or mid-shaft of the lower leg between the knee and the ankle, tossed a good piece of that part of the leg up in a tree above me that would later end up in my aid bag, or part of it would end up in my aid bag, come back to the States. You want to talk about clothes stinking? Clothes ain't got nothing on dead tissue. But so I hit the ground, missing a leg on the left side. I'd blown a hole in the wall adjacent to where I was walking down this alleyway or moving down this alleyway. And I looked down and missing a leg, I'm like, oh, oddly enough, it's not bleeding. But knowing that it would eventually bleed, I pulled out one tourniquet, started tightening it. The windlass broke. Yeah.
Huh.
It was not one made out of plastic, for those that think the cat's made out of plastic. But
it was made out of metal.
It was made out of aluminum, shiny aluminum.
Oh, brittle aluminum.
Yep. Well, yeah, T7075, good stuff.
Yeah.
But my understanding from talking to one of the guys at Walter Reed, who had been a metallurgist in a former career, said that in a blast like that, the the vibration of a rock striking the aluminum at the right spot caused a harmonic fracture. And a little bit of force just broke it. Anyway, pulled out a second one, applied the second one in the same spot that I was trying to apply the first one. I didn't bother to take the first one off. I just grabbed the second one. You know, like we talked about today about the lassoing, trying to lasso your foot. That's not a good idea when you have a stump. Like the bone ends are very sensitive to things hitting them.
Good to know.
Yeah. Don't try that at home. So,
do you need a glass of water, Jimmy?
If I pass out, it's on Ryan. You got it. The rest of the way.
I'm tracking. I've got a lot of questions. So this is
yeah. So tighten the second one down, stops the bleeding. I go to scoop myself back against the wall. Like I had the Mark 13 300 Win Mag sniper rifle. I'd made a set of backpack straps, and so I carried a Noveski N4 upper on a government lower. Is my upper receiver. So I'd move back and forth between two different uppers, both 16-inch, but based on, you know, what I was doing with it. I mean, a lot of people don't think that you can kill somebody with a 5.56 round, you know, at 600-700 meters. But I mean, the retained energy in that round is the same as a 44 Magnum at point blank distance. I mean,
so that's what you got. That's what you have on you.
Yeah. So I carried that as a battle rifle, carbine, if you will, or carbine battle rifle, if you will. And then I'd have the Mark 13 on my back. Anything I couldn't solve with the 16-inch, off came the Mark 13. And then my aid bag was on over top of it, and on the outside of the aid bag was an M320 grenade launcher. So anyway, so all that crap's still on my back. I went and scooped myself back, and I noticed there was a trail of blood after I started to scoop myself back that was 8, 9, 10 inches wide, and pretty consistent, meaning it wasn't like it was dropping or lightly pouring. It was pouring out of my pelvis. I stuck my hand in my pants. I'm like, this can't be good. Like, how much other things could go wrong today? Stick my hand in my pants, and this might be a little graphic, but it was like putting my hand in a bowl of like really smushed spaghetti noodles, like rotini, kind of like just mush in warm marinara sauce. Like that's kind of what it felt like very descriptive, right? So I'm like, well, this is horrible.
That's an understatement.
I like tucked one hand underneath my perineum, took the other hand and just smashed everything I could down onto itself, you know, thinking I'm going to bleed to death right here from a major pelvic bleed. I heard my team sergeant moving down the alleyway in the direction that I just came from. And there's a huge no-no. Like, somebody gets blown up, do not take the path that guy just took, because there may be another one, right? And the funny thing is where I got blown up, I'd crossed that ditch probably 100 times over the last couple months of being there.
Just didn't hit it in the right spot or the wrong spot.
Right.
You think you'd been there the whole time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like it was, I mean, I was probably 150 meters from where I slept every night.
Do you know what it was?
It was homemade explosives. So
I do just
after I left, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I remember hearing stories from family who had been over there, and they say that you look out over the fence and you see children walking to and from whatever they're walking to and from, or even out playing, and they're hopping.
Oh, yeah.
And they're bouncing all over, and you'd wonder, like, why are they doing that? Why are they going from that place to that place that way? And they're jumping over bombs.
Right. Well, I mean, during the 70s, late 70s, and up through 1988, I mean, we were involved in arming the Mujahideen against the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. And some of those items that we used were pot mines, the plastic ones that don't get picked up by metal detectors. I mean, and those things didn't get. Nobody went out there like picking up dog turds.
And they didn't take inventory and be like,
right.
We're missing 31.
Yeah, right. We started with 108 and we got all but 31.
You learn.
Right. So, where was I?
So he comes running.
TBI.
He comes
running up.
Yeah.
Cloud of dust from the blast and everything. He looks down and he's like, holy bleep.
Yep.
Right? I'm not going to try that one. That might be a little overstep. But I'm like, Kurt, that's not reassuring. Like, you're supposed to reassure the patient, right? That they're going to be okay. That did not reassure me. So he goes to work, drops his stuff, immediately goes to work, calls on the radio, like, guys, there was only a few of us Americans that were out from the team. There was a couple EOD guys with us. Like, we'd been taking care of some UXO or unexploded ordnance from some RPGs and some other stuff that had been fired at us the night prior, the night I just gotten back to the team. Like, I was back with the team a day and got whacked again. So he gets to me. He starts working on me. He'd been a CAG medic.
Which is pretty much the highest evolution of
Yep.
special operations medics.
Yeah.
Okay.
For assault medicine, oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Like, I was in the best
Good
care.
hands.
There's no other person in the United States I would want to have taken care of me in that moment. Maybe Matt Garrison. But aside from Matt Garrison, who we graduated the course, he went to third group and then stayed like a year and went to CAG. And he's a great medic too. But aside from those two, like, I'd rather have them than any surgeon that I've ever been worked on by. And after 113 surgeries, I've had a lot of people's hands in me. So anyway, so he starts working on me. It's clear I'm pretty jacked up and bleeding from a lot of places inside of me that he couldn't get to readily. I'll try to make this a little short because I could talk about this for days, but because I remember verbatim, like, the entire incident. Like, there's right up till right before the bird got there and I got snowed with some ketamine and there's a little hazy spot, but up to that point, like, anyway, so he
That's
starts
actually really impressive. I wouldn't expect that to be something that somebody would say, that they remembered it so well. So clearly.
Yes. And I am very thankful that I remember it all.
Yeah.
Because I would not want to have gaps in. So anyway, so he starts packing some stuff. They get me packaged, pick me up. Like, we were talking about the kneeling thing, right? Like, if Kurt had knelt on my pelvis, he would have completely separated it from my spine. Like, center of my pelvis is called the symphysis pubis. It was completely fractured. One side where it attaches to my spine was fractured. Your pelvis, if you look at an x-ray, is just two big rings right down at the bottom. Like, on the right side, I'm missing almost the entire ring to this day. Held together with, I say baling wire, duct tape, and
I just call
bad
him
attitude.
Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah.
I mean, it was...
So...
Yeah, titanium girdle. He has like a titanium mesh pelvis, basically, right? So easiest way to describe it?
Yeah. Like, it moved, like, when I'm in a classroom, you've not seen me teach yet, but, like, when I'm teaching, like, I rock back and forth because it's almost like a nervous twitch kind of thing because I can feel my pelvis rock back and forth in the springs. I can feel the vibration of the springs moving inside my pelvis. So they picked me up, right before they picked me up, put me on a litter. The southern end of the compound was manned by Afghan Special Forces guys. Okay. And I'd gotten, like, I was one of those SF guys that wanted to spend time with host nation dudes. Like, I didn't get an SF because I thought that I was CAG light. I got an SF because I wanted to make a difference in other people's countries through unconventional warfare. Mm-hmm. And, like, I knew exactly what I was getting into. And so every night I would go down and talk to the Afghans. I spent every morning with them, with their one medic, teaching him how to do sick call medicine for his own guy so he can take care of them. Like, he'd come up and watch me do the same thing for my guys. Like, great relationship. Like, I took FDNY T-shirts for every rotation and gave away either Yankees hats or Fidney T-shirts to the host nation guys. Like, I've got more like Afghan paraphernalia, hats and clothing and man dresses that have been given to me, and like nobody else on the team got anything. They're like, why didn't I get something? I'm like, you've been playing Xbox for 8 months. Like, I'm down there drinking some nasty tea and drinking milk from a goat's stomach, you know. But anyway, so this guy, the medic, was manning the 50 cal on the compound. So he hops off, runs over to me, and he's like, I'm like crouched, like laying semi-recumbent position. And I look up, and here's an Afghan in a pair of BVDs and a pair of Adidas slip-on, like, shower shoes.
Yeah.
Like the tunnel ones, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the only thing he's wearing, a pair of BVDs and that set of shower shoes. He reaches down, grabs me by the belt and underneath the neck and snatches my backside up and put me on the litter. They run literally with 4 dudes on the litter and Kurt dragging my aid bag and rifle and carbine and to the compound. And then as soon as they get me inside, they throw me on a Polaris Ranger 6-wheeler.
Yeah.
Go screaming up through the middle of the compound to close to the front gate. That way, when the helicopter landed, they didn't have such a far way to carry me. And so they picked me up off the back and set me down. Well, the kid, we had some infantry guys that were manning the compound with us. They were called Uplift. They were basically attached to us, and they'd go out on missions and pull guard duty and do all kinds of stuff. Great dudes. Kid was so nervous that he put the 6-wheeler in reverse and backed the rear set of tires up over me.
No.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Yep. I'm like, what else can go wrong today?
What
like
part of you?
Yeah, my chest and legs. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like one of the team guys
I mean,
is like trying to like, he like sees this happening and like throws himself forward onto the back of the Polaris and like braces. He's like, hey. And the dude turns around like this, oh, I'm sorry. And he's trying to get it back down in gear and out of reverse and in the forward, and eventually pulls off of me. But it was.
I mean, you talk about the dude not coming up and kneeling on your pelvis. I mean, you almost had a razor in your pelvis,
right?
And not like a Dollar
Yeah.
Shave Club razor.
Yeah. Harry's. I'd have preferred a Harry's.
He's like as hard to kill as those zombies in the simulator.
I mean,
Anyway, so I'm laughing at this time. I'm like, really? Like, what else could possibly go wrong?
Don't ask.
You know,
Please don't ask.
Yeah. So luckily, things kind of went smoothly after that. Like, you know, I had a morphine syringe. I tried to give myself some morphine, but then, you know, through talking to Kurt and whatnot, like I got sideways and stuck the morphine syringe distal to the tourniquet. So now that all the morphine's trapped in the leg with the tourniquet above it, right? Not doing any good.
Oh.
You know, I'm like, why is this morphine not working? And then I'm like, oh, you're a jackass. You put it distal to tourniquet. You know, I'm like, that's that mechanical piece we talked about this morning, right? Like being able to control, right? But so then I grab a fentanyl lollipop and I go to sucking on a fentanyl lollipop. Like it is absolutely what it sounds like. It's almost like it's a lollipop. That's what we call them.
All right.
Submucosal lozenge. But you're supposed to stick it in the cheek and just let it dissolve, right?
What is it? This is just a
fentanyl.
True ignorance showing. What does fentanyl do?
Fentanyl is a narcotic.
Okay, got it.
That is 10 times stronger than morphine.
Heavily abused on the streets of America.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
well, there's that too.
Yeah. So I got all excited because I had some pain meds and like ended up like chewing the fentanyl off the lollipop and swallowing it, which does no good.
Oh.
I'm like, this thing's not working. You know, Kurt's like, that's the second one you've chewed up. You know, and
it's got to absorb through them.
So once it gets into GI, it doesn't do anything? You got to take it. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like it will a little bit, but it's not as...
Not the same delivery.
Not the same delivery. Like transmucosal or through your cheek is like a few minutes ago before we started, like I folded something up and stuck in my tongue. Like that's how I take pain meds now.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's pretty quick. The only problem is I've taken it so much, like it's like taking an aspirin now, but I guess aspirin's better than nothing. So anyway, so where was I? Oh, fentanyl. So they get me to the front. Kurt's continuing to work on me. Like I'm taking stuff, like they lay the aid bag down to the right of me. I'm pulling stuff out of my aid bag, handing it to Kurt while he's caring for me. I'm spiking IV bags. Like
You're just, I mean, you're totally understating the level-headedness that you had in this scenario because, you just got blown up and also ran over. I mean,
clearly that was the harder
Wile E.
part.
Coyote,
and he's over there, like, oh yeah.
Polaris Ranger said, "Act me."
Can you imagine being?
Mom's like,
Can you imagine being in the ER? Well, yeah, doctor, I suggest you use this one on there. I mean,
we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Okay,
because we go there. So some of the guys come over and like I'm still wearing my kit and like I wasn't one of the like SF guys that liked a bunch of pouches attached to my armor. So I always wore slick armor and would put a chest rig over top of it. That way, it was a whole lot easier to change the chest rig if I was, manning like carrying the Scar Heavy or something with 7.62 mags instead of 5.56 mags and be like 5 minutes before the mission trying to change magazine pouches on my kit. And I also looked at it like if I have to literally run down one of these guys up the mountain, I'm not going to do it in 150 pounds of armor and other kit, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to be able to drop the armor piece and leave the fighting loadout the exact same. And so I just wore oddly enough, Kurt called it my Mogadishu throwbacks. It was a black plate carrier, just like you would see, like not just like those, but in Black Hawk Down, but it was black. And then I had a green recce chest rig that I wore over top of it.
Yeah.
Anyway. And so when I just gotten back, like I had a new GPS and some new gadgets that I'd picked up when I was on my way back to the team from the previous incident where I'd gotten injured. And one of the guys, the intel sergeant on the team, he noticed that I had a new GPS that was newer than his, and not to be undone, he's like, "Hey, man, I need that more than you do." I'm like, "First of all, you're not going out on missions like I am, and so you're not getting it." And so he took the opportunity once I was injured. Like he leans over me, he goes, "Hey man, you're not using that GPS anymore, are you?"
Casting lots for his clothes. I mean, that's a familiar story through history.
Yeah. So I pull out the GPS and it was an E-Trex, like 2012 Series E-Trex. Like it was the first full color model E-Trex, which was high speed in 2012.
Heck yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, man, you can have it. The whole face of it's completely crushed from something in the blast hitting it. Like, I'm surprised all my stuff didn't fall at the bottom of my chest rig because that thing was as tore up as my bottom end was. And like dudes are like, "Hey, man, let me get them P-Mags." And like, I never got my P-Mags all back. Like they still like pass the blame about who took all my P-Mags, but
just a bunch of
filthy
they were.
scavengers.
Literally.
Just the vultures of war.
Right. Like, I'm like, I know what you guys are doing. You're trying to keep my mind off of the situation, right? Get me engaged in something other than...
Yeah, some banter, which I'm sure you're used to.
Right. And like we had a dude there, he was a former 10th group intel guy, and he was working on the computer system that we use for intelligence stuff. And he came out and he's kneeled down, and he's holding my hand. He's like holding it, like rubbing it like I'm an 80-year-old woman with congestive heart failure. And, "Hey, darling." And I had to run him off because he was bothering it. Like he was crying, like straight up crying. "I can't believe this happened to you." I'm like, "This happened to me. Why are you crying?" Like, I mean, I'm the dude missing parts and pieces. Anyway, so they finally get me like bandaged up as best possible, and so Kurt starts. So I eventually lean up to Kurt while he's working diligently on my pelvis still, packing 12 rolls of combat gauze in my pelvis.
He neglected to describe the fact that it was a 6-inch hole that was blasted.
Well, I didn't figure that out.
Is that where all that blood was pouring out of then?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
It split me from my, probably an inch in front of my anus.
Sure.
To all the way up front to the base of my penis.
There's already like a perforation there for
right.
stuff to start splitting. I mean, it just makes...
Right.
And that was the seam at the split?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, except it didn't go up the split. It just kind of blew a hole straight up. Like I lost the twins in the divorce.
Got it.
Got it.
Yep.
But I mean, the rest of it's okay. Like I made a couple jokes earlier today in the class about how many surgeries can you have on 1% of your total body surface area. You know, like out of 113, like 7 of them have just been on my penis.
You said it.
And
with dramatic pause.
Dramatic pause.
But
I mean, but the point, right? But like you got to put that stuff out together. You know, like it was like I ain't even going into that, but that's a whole funny story by itself. Anyway, so Kurt's working on me. I lean up, grab him by the shirt sleeve on his combat uniform, and I pull him towards me because I couldn't lean up any further. Right, like every time I went to move, like I could feel stuff moving in my pelvis, and I'm like, that can't be good. So I'm like, thank God nobody knelt on my pelvis before I got run over by the 6x6. But
would you rather?
Yeah, right. So anyway, so he he leans forward, and I'm like, hey, dude, I got to have something for pain. I can't, like, I'm like maxed out. Like I don't have a whole lot more in me. Like I know I'm, you know, like all things to the contrary, it looks like I'm having a good time, but I'm not having a good time here. And I need something for pain. He's like, all right, man, let me get finished here. He goes, I will, as soon as I can get your narcs out, I'll snow you. And so I didn't have another medic on the team, and it was just Kurt and I. And as the team sergeant, Kurt's responsibility to the team was far greater than just being a medic. And so I took as much of the medic piece off of him as he would allow. Like, we'd go out on missions, he'd still carry an aid bag. And so when we got our narcotics, I just naturally split them up amongst me and Kurt. That way, no matter where he was, where I was, both of us had narcotics with which to treat people if the time come. But after he gave me, so I got a sternal IO started. That's like a hard needle that is spring-loaded that punches itself into your sternum.
Why not make another hole?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, you know, so it really didn't hurt. Like, it's pressure. That was the third one I'd had in my sternum. Not that day, but it's the third sternal IO I had. And across my time being injured.
Yeah.
Clearly multiple occasions. Like you, Black Cloud, like stuff just happens. Always in combat, but it happens nonetheless. So he snows me, and I'm like, oh, that's a little warm feeling, you know. And then things get a little hazy for a few minutes. And I remember the guys talking. They're like, my team leader comes running up, and when you give somebody ketamine, they turn gray, right? It's natural.
Interesting.
And a lot of medics get disconcerted when they see it because they're not accustomed to it. And the team leader comes running up. He had just called to get a status on the helicopter, which was delayed because there were other guys that needed the helicopter more than needed to be medevac more than I did. And so that got waved off a couple times. But so they got a status update on helicopter. Team leader comes running outside. And he sees me laying there all gray. He's like, what the heck just happened? He was talking 30 seconds ago. How'd you kill him? You know, like to Kurt. Kurt's like, I didn't kill him. I snowed him. He's not feeling any pain now. And I wasn't. So take me down to the bottom of the hill. Helicopter lands. The guys, like, all huddled around me. Said a quick prayer and loaded me in a Air Force Pavlo with some PJs who took me to Tarin Kau, Afghanistan, where I was 14 days, 6 hours, and 8 minutes earlier. So roll in, like the same ER staff that was there 2 weeks prior greeted me at the door. And so as they're rolling me back, it's like any other emergency room, you know, like last name, last four of your social, date of birth. And so they get to, they all remembered my name, just not the other information. Clearly made a mark on them when I was there the first time. And so I'm like, they're like, oh, how much do you weigh? So I lifted my leg up off the table, and I'm like, well, it was 245 this morning, but you could probably call it a square 185 now, and just laid the leg back down. So the SEAL Command Master Chief.
How do you answer that question? That's
Right.
a tough one. Yeah.
Command Master Chief is like, oh my God. He's like, why aren't you a SEAL? And that's when I pulled my hat up, and I'm like, because I don't have good hair. And he's like, well, I'm bald too. And I'm like, well, that joke doesn't work then. Damn it. But so the ER in Tarankow, Afghanistan is literally about twice the size of this room that we're in. And the big piece that separates the sterile operating room from the non-sterile ER is a sheet. And so we exchanged some pleasantries with the orthopedic surgeon that put my left leg back together last time. And he's like, hey, we're going to take you back to the OR now so we can get started fixing you because you're bleeding to death still. And
Comforting.
Yeah.
Right.
Comforting.
Reassuring the patient, right?
Right. Yeah. Like we talked about that today a little bit.
Yeah.
You were there for that.
I think I was. I'm just a reassuring person in general, though.
Well, yeah. You got that kind face.
Yeah.
Like DJ's kind that grows on a horse's. Anyway, so they roll me back, and so I learned over my shoulder, and I'm like, hey, doc, I'm like, don't put me to sleep until you tell me exactly what's wrong with me. I'm like, I want to know what is wrong with me. He goes, okay. He goes, rest assured. He goes, I'll let you know. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to relax for a second. And then I remember thinking, what is that silver thing? And then my mouth opens, and I'm like, I can't move my mouth or anything else. They had paralyzed me and was what we call RSI, or rapid sequence intubation, induction, where like they paralyze you and put a laryngoscope in your mouth so they can put a breathing tube down your neck so that they can start working on you. And they forgot to give me the retrograde amnesic that allows you not to remember seeing those things. And I'm like, oh, so that's what that looks like. And then I went to sleep and woke up at Walter Reed 11 days later.
How about that?
Yep, in the ICU at Walter Reed, being taken care of by the cat lady. Yep, covered in a trash bag, tied down to the bed. Like, oh my goodness, it was bad. It was horrible.
Well,
yeah. So
what?
And then that would, so I went from Tarankow to Kandahar to Bagram to Germany to Walter Reed, and when I was in. So they worked on me for a little bit at TK, couldn't stop the bleeding.
So how many units of blood did you get between?
I've had 66 in total. I had 6 in at TK. Then when I got to Kandahar, I went to the OR twice, and between those 2 trips, had 20 units.
We talk about the importance of donating blood. This is a good one.
Yeah, yes. It absolutely is. Like the blood bank at TK, at Tarankow, the Roll 3 there, meaning that's the size of the hospital. That's all that means. So, and they had to, one of the nurses from the OR had to walk across the street to Camp Brown where the SF command is there in Kandahar, and told our battalion command, James is on the table, and he's going to bleed to death unless we get 20 volunteers.
Yeah?
Yep.
How about that? Yeah.
Clearly they got volunteers. So I'm not sure I'd have volunteered for me, but
You're worth
I'm
it,
just
buddy.
kidding.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's, that was all the easy part. The hard part was the next 7 weeks of being prostrate in a hospital bed. The only time I moved was to go into the OR table and back to the bed. Like I was covered in a trash bag from my nipple line down, had 19 wound vacs that were like little suction devices sucking bad fluid off of every part of my body that was open.
It baffles me that we have One, it still baffles me that you just survived all of that, and I mean, made it through that. So I don't even know what to tell somebody, but like kudos. I'll just say that as like understatement of the year. But then also it just baffles me how much technology and devices and just know-how and whatever it is that we have. I mean, you're bringing up devices that are designed to suck bad fluids off of your body. I mean, just the things that we have in place it's incredible how we can bring or keep somebody alive and bring them back to fully operational. I mean, you walk around today and you brought up going into Deer Valley Lodge. I mean, the person didn't even know that you had, your prosthetic leg and all that stuff. I mean,
most people have no idea.
It's incredible.
I mean, there's a term that I've heard used more recently, I guess the last little bit on the joint trauma.
Joint trauma symposium?
Yeah.
Or are you talking about?
The JTS.
Yeah.
And they were talking about a ranger that was blown up in a really serious way, triple amputee. And they used the term burden of survivorship. And it really kind of made me sit down and think, because I was like, here guys are coming off the battlefield as warfighters, forever changed in a split second. And now we have the technology and the medics are so good, like those ranger medics or Kurt, they're so good and they are taught so well. They are able to keep a guy alive that at any other point in our history would not have survived.
Right.
And now you have this whole burden of survivorship for his family, for him, like adjusting to this totally radically different quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you, James obviously was, terribly injured. He's a case study for, that kind of pelvic injury and everything else. And there's guys that have been, hurt even worse that are alive today because of the quality of the medicine. But it's the after part that, that's the surviving part is almost like the bottom of the mountain. Like Justin Lassick, my friend was at, double amputee from 10th group last year. And, you're sitting there staring at the bottom, looking up going, okay,
where does the rebuilding start? Mm-hmm. Is the question.
Yeah.
Right? Like mentally, psychologically, physically, spiritual. I mean, like it's a huge piece. And you said it perfectly. Like I would not have survived the blast if that took place in 2001. I'd have been dead because guys weren't carrying tourniquets then.
Yeah.
I mean, and they didn't have the practice. I mean, the evolution of the global war on terror is our medics went from going with Korea vintage supplies and training, because that was, and Vietnam vintage supplies and training, because that was the last major conflict that they had been in. So all the medical doctrine was based on that, to now this unconventional warfare in Afghanistan and Iraq, somewhat conventional, a lot of unconventional, but the advance in knowledge on how to treat those kinds of injuries was just like leapfrogging, just like the technology, like whether it's your rifle optics that you guys build here, the technology leaps are, it's almost exponential each generation. And the same thing happened with battlefield medicine. It just was accelerating so quickly because so many guys were getting hurt.
Yeah, and that was my huge point of fascination. Like it went from treating crushes and gunshot wounds to now IEDs.
Yeah,
a totally different thing.
Well, we mentioned in the class, so aside from the, my work at NAR, like I work for, I'm building the medical program for Fieldcraft Survival. And I taught a class this last week called Critical Incident Aid Course. And a part of it, like we talk about the change in battlefield medicine and how post the Mogadishu incident, when tactical combat casualty care became the focal point of reimagining warrior ethos to everybody in the military, where up to Mogadishu, somebody got injured, they yelled medic, medic came, running forward and rendered whatever aid they could. but he and or she were the only ones on the battlefield that were doing medicine.
Yeah.
And the biggest change is that everybody is capable of saving their own life as well as others, like self-aid and buddy aid. And now, when that all started, the number one cause of death on the battlefield was bleeding to death from an extremity injury, which was the catalyst for really tourniquets taking off. And then the second leading cause of death was tension pneumothorax, which is air pressure inside of the chest wall but outside of the lung, pushing on the lungs and the heart, trying to shove them over to one side. And then the last one was airway compromise. And so come the end of 2011, Special Operations Command, Ranger Regiment in particular, had spent so much time doing medical training with infantry dudes from the unit, from Ranger Regiment, that is, that bleeding to death from an extremity wound wasn't happening. And right now they're not losing people to preventable death, but to things like DCBI or dismounted complex blast injury, like what injured me. And the tools needed to care for those people aren't just as simple as put a tourniquet on it. You know, like wound packing is a simple skill, but it takes a lot of practice to be good at it. And as medicine, the other piece I wanted to talk about briefly with respect to your question is the biggest place it's changed is everything that we do is science-based, evidence-based. There's no, I think this is a good idea, so let's try this until it kills somebody, and then we'll try something else, right? Like EMS worked on that model, not specifically, but like there was a bunch of stuff they did because that's just the way they did it, not because they had any evidence, peer-reviewed documents, studies to support how it was done. I mean, one of the biggest differences I would say was, and some places are still struggling with this, is not giving IV fluids to patients that have bled out, right? Like, the big push now is to carry blood on ground transport EMS units because the military has proven that giving blood works. Yeah. Well, the military proved that in the Civil War. I mean, they were taking blood out of guy A, putting it in guy B, and saving people's lives. And then,
right there.
And then in World War II, the exact same thing all over again, right? It's like we got to continuously learn these, or relearn these things. And I mean, the tourniquet piece has been huge. You know, the
body armor, advancements in body armor has helped a lot.
Oh, yeah. Like I would have died several trips before when I got blown up from being shot without the advent of body armor. And so, but what you're seeing now is in the civilian market, and when I was teaching earlier today, and when I teach for NAR, whoever I'm teaching for, I make it a point to point out that just because the military is doing it doesn't make that the answer for everything, right? Like tactical combat casualty care came around. Like we saved a whole bunch of lives with tourniquets, chest seals, and being able to open an airway and position a patient appropriately and then keep them warm, to the public safety industry, or law enforcement in particular, going, well, if that's saving soldiers' lives, why aren't we doing some of that? You know, now you got law enforcement officers carrying tourniquets and having IFAKs or individual first aid kits on them during the duty day instead of leaving it in the door of their car, which is always a funny, like you leave your tourniquet in the door of your car. Well, I've never needed it before. And I'm like, oh, how many people have you shot? Well, I've never shot anybody. Why don't you leave your pistol in the car then?
Right. That's a good point.
That is.
Right?
That is an excellent point.
And so with the active shooter piece and the civilian, folks getting injured, just because the military was successful at it doesn't mean that's the solution for the civilian industry. And I say that to say this. Like we started there's the Stop the Bleed program, right? That program should technically be called Stop the Tension Pneumothorax program.
Right.
Kids in school shootings aren't dying from extremity trauma, and it isn't because they're not dying because a tourniquet's being applied. It's because they're getting shot center mass or shot in the head. And while one is a survivable issue, tension pneumothorax, being shot in the head is not, generally speaking.
Right.
I'm a pretty good medic, but I can't fix that problem in the field. And neither could a neurosurgeon. But what we can do is stop focusing on what the military has specifically done to stave off extremity hemorrhage or death from extremity hemorrhage overseas and law enforcement here, and recognize that kids aren't dying, in active shooter incidents, people aren't dying from extremity injuries by and large. They're dying from tension pneumothorax and other penetrating trauma to their chest and abdomen.
Major trauma from almost contact shot.
As instructors, is that a hard one to teach, though, just considering like the mechanisms involved? Like, do they make a good model, a good dummy, or a good course that you can practice that fix?
Oh, yeah. Like chest seal application?
Yep. Where does a person even look? Obviously, besides where you two work and what you do. Like, is this, I've never seen that in anything that I've done. I've done very little, but I've never seen that dummy. I've never seen that aid. That
it isn't so much the dummy; it's recognizing where you need to put them. Like you could use any mannequin. Like you could buy a mannequin to put clothing on and practice on, right? Like as long as it's anatomically correct, mostly.
Yeah.
Like it'll work out. You're just talking about between the suprasternal notch at the top of the sternum and the belly button. Any hole that communicates inside of the chest between those two gets a vented chest seal put over it, right? But like some folks have gotten so wrapped around the whole like Stop the Bleed program that they're completely missing the mark on that piece and frankly ignoring that people are dying from other problem sets, you know? So you asked about the biggest change, and I would offer that everybody has this one-size-fits-all solution to whatever ails you, and that's the military model of medicine. And there's a lot of good stuff that's being done. The blood program piece is great. Plenty of people saved every year because they've gotten blood where otherwise they wouldn't have, years before.
And tourniquets do save lives on the civilian side. I mean,
right, they do.
Law enforcement officers are, we have a constant stream of
thank yous.
Thank yous of officers using it and civilians using it for extremity bleeds, whether it's, we just had one where a piece of rebar fell off, in an industrial warehouse. They had rebar stacked up, it fell off, went right through the lady's leg, and, tourniquet application saved her. So there's, I think the big thing on the civilian side is to be open to the idea that it's not just the military model. Because civilians, for the most part, I mean, it's a little bit different right now in certain cities, are not wearing plates and body armor.
Right.
So, kids at school aren't sitting there wearing flak jackets. When they get shot, they're getting shot in places that
don't have body armor coverage.
Don't have body armor. Where the military guy gets shot there and he keeps fighting because that's covered by a ceramic plate. And
okay.
So it's kind of a really, I'm not going to go into the details of that stuff. It's just it's a sad reality we live in. Like I have kids, he has a daughter. I have one in kindergarten and one in the 7th grade. This year, of course, everybody's been at home, so it hasn't, school shootings have not been a big, they haven't been in the public eye like they were because nobody's been at school. But, like last year, Jonah had a plate of soft armor. It slid into his backpack. I'm like, because he had an active shooter threat at his school one day. And I was like, Jonah, you know how to use a tourniquet. You know how to put on a chest seal. You know how to use a pressure dressing. They're in your backpack. And here's a plate of soft armor that can at least give you a chance. Like, put your backpack on, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, and run.
Sure.
Keep your head down, But it's a weird conversation to have with your kids.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, I don't know if we ever have lived in a utopian world where these things can't happen.
Yeah.
And now it's recently just coming to light. Kind of a bummer, but
yeah. But it's, I mean, it got to the point where Jenna didn't even know, you know, he forgets he probably doesn't have. He went to use his backpack for fishing the other day, and I was like, hey, dude, you don't need soft armor to go fishing. Sorry, buddy. Been weighing you down.
Depends on where you're fishing.
You never know. I mean,
what you're
depending
fishing
on who
for.
you're fishing with, some people on their back
People
cast,
are pretty territorial about their fishing spots.
I tell you, yeah.
Wow. Was that directed at somebody?
Myself.
the
Yeah,
back cast.
Are you a
The back
wild?
cast.
Are you a wild caster? Do you fly
My
fish
dad-
everywhere?
Tell you what,
That's funny.
I got a lot of tree bass
Tree bass,
that
yeah.
I've caught.
Wood
in
of
my
fish.
day. Yeah, woodfish.
I like
Plenty
that.
of them. Man,
So that's the story.
that's a hell of a story.
Kind of leaves you
Yeah.
like,
I also we're talking.
Where do we go
life
from
of
there?
Yeah, where do we go from there? Life of a special operations medic. Maybe is that
that's
that
the
might
second
not-
life of a special operations medic in his case. I mean, as of tomorrow.
Seriously, yeah.
A live day. Veterans Day is coming up here in a couple of weeks. Stacking them up.
I got to say the thing that
Yeah.
that really gets me the most is when you think about like practitioners, doctors, nurses, combat medics like yourself. They never just retire, right? You don't get out of it. Like a really good practitioner, it's the last thing that they do well. And it's been how long since the injury?
2012.
Okay.
Be 8 years.
And
tomorrow.
you're still doing the thing.
He went back on active duty after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I took a couple trips.
When Jim had asked like what got you into it, I was always there. It was never not a part of you. Like born into it, cellular structure.
Yep.
It is. Yeah.
Well, like I still like I'm a volunteer firefighter.
Yeah.
Like I put on gear, fight the fire on the inside, burned up a couple prosthetics in the process. Like 11, 12. I'm on my 12th.
Are you really?
$100,000 a piece. Like I keep breaking them. Like they can't keep up with me.
Right.
But
Shocker.
yeah. Went skydiving, trying to, like get that, exercise those muscles, and left the aircraft. And because of the way the new prosthetics are built, like it's all sensors, right?
Yep.
So it knows when there's a certain amount of pressure pushing the ankle backwards, and it will literally lock the piston down so that it can't bend. So I'll leave the aircraft, kind of like sideways, and as soon as I went to get flat, and I start in this flat spin, right? And I'm like, this is not right. I know I'm not that bad out of practice. Come on. And
Oh, is it a solo jump too?
yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
right
yeah,
on.
Yeah.
So your rudder's sticking out.
Yeah, so I got a rudder dragging me around in a circle back there. And I ended up rolling over on my side, almost got to my back, and it let go, and I peeled it around and then rolled back over, and I was good to go. But, it's, at like the times that I jumped after that, I always jumped with a non-robotic leg.
Yeah.
It was just a mechanical leg that would fold underneath me.
Wow.
But then when I land with my one leg out and land on one foot, and then just put the other foot down. So,
And you just
How about
doing
that?
it live. Jump out of the plane. Who the hell knows what happens when that chute pops and you're about to hit the ground? Like, let's see what shakes out.
Yep.
Land at 1 foot.
Yep.
Right on, man.
Figured it out on the way to your ground. Hey,
Phenomenal.
you got the rest of your life to figure it out anyway.
Right.
So
Hell yeah.
might as well enjoy life while you're,
Wow.
I'm not changed.
You always just been this calm and collected then.
Yeah,
That's funny.
but I just mean when let's say I've not changed, like the enemy is not going to defeat me.
Right.
The only person that can defeat me is me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I was laid in a bed for 7 weeks. Started walked a quarter mile the first time I took my steps. Like it literally beat the end of my leg up. Mm-hmm. Just the tissue, pounding on the tissue. Because I'm a TK or a through knee amputee, meaning all they did was cut my kneecap and the 2 lower leg bones away. I have the full length of my femur. Which as a short guy is difficult because I don't have a lot of space for a prosthetic underneath me. But so when I'm resting in the socket that so there's a carbon fiber piece that attaches to the leg, and that's the interface between me and the prosthetic. So it's kind of like a little wetsuit material you put over the limb, and then your leg just slides down into the socket. Well, I literally sit in the bottom of the socket. So when I step, there's pressure on the end of my leg just like there is on the end of your femur when it makes contact with the tibia and the fibula. So, but yeah, I beat that thing. It was like I took the leg off, went to take the sleeve off, and it just poured blood out of the bottom of it. My physical therapist was like, "Oh my God, would you please take it easy? Like, wait till the tissue matures and then you can go full speed."
Yeah.
I'm like, I ain't got time to slow down.
Ain't got time for that.
Didn't you do
ain't got time for that.
Like when I first met you, back when I did the TCCC course at NAR, however, was that like 8 years ago? Almost. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was right after you got. It would have been like
2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it was. I just come back from my first trip.
Yep. Hadn't you just run a marathon?
I ran the Army 10 miler that year.
Okay.
I ran the Marine Corps marathon the next year.
That's badass.
Never been a runner. 240 pounds is not a runner at 5'8" make.
That's a bowling ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm strong and fast, but I'm not steady. Like, but I told myself, I'm going to run a marathon. Not because I want to, but because I can.
Right on.
And then I've not run that much since.
Right.
I'm like, check that block. What's next?
Have you ever, before I ask my next question, have you ever piloted an aircraft?
No.
Okay, so aside from that.
Oh, no, that's not accurate either.
Oh.
I have taken the stick and rudder, but I didn't take it off the ground or put it back on the ground.
Okay, got it. Okay. So aside from start to finish piloting an aircraft, was there anything on the ground that you didn't do when you were in and you were doing what you were doing that you were like, man, that would have been cool?
Yeah. Is there a bucket? Like, what's on your bucket list?
Yeah, I mean, you said you were sniper qualified. You said that a medic. You were, using carbine. You're doing intelligence stuff. So you're
calling in
airstrikes.
SOTAC qualified. As a JTAC qualified.
That's pretty badass right there. Was there anything where you're like, man, that guy's got a cool job and I haven't done that?
No, I was pretty satisfied. If I wanted to go do something, I was happy in SF. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I certainly had found what I was built for.
Yeah.
I believe people are purpose built, just like machinery. Some people might not know what that is, but or know what their purpose is. But I'd found mine, and it was to make difference in other people's lives. And I just chose to do it wearing a uniform with an aid bag and a carbine. So,
right on.
And now I do it teaching and passing on the lessons that I learned the hard way in combat. Whether it's some of the tips and tricks that I passed on to you guys today about tourniquet application and how to short cycle, having a whole bunch of different techniques for different types of tourniquet applications, to wound packing, to pressure points on the body based on known locations where the artery passes either underneath something or past something in the shallow.
Not a fan.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
Yeah, he's whiny. He acts like I hurt him or something. So, but to being a medic on a SWAT team for a sheriff's office back home.
Yeah.
Still do entries, still teach tactics, CQB, long distance stuff. I mean,
dude, you stay busy, man.
Yeah. I got to
cool.
keep something, my brain's got to be constantly moving at 100 miles an hour. I can't. I'm afraid if I stop, I won't get started again. It's like that physics. An object at rest will remain at rest until acted upon by greater force. Object in motion will remain in motion until acted upon by equal or greater force.
So it's going to take a force greater than an IED to stop, because clearly, they've tried to put force on you already.
Yeah. I have people tell me all the time, that may have been God the first time you got blown up telling you maybe you need to take it easy. I'm like, well, clearly I didn't listen. And clearly I didn't get this hint on the second go-round either, so I don't know what he's going to have to do. You know, it's like that joke that people say about, like, the guy that's on the roof, the hurricane, and people come by on a boat, and then there's a helicopter comes by, and he's like, I'm waiting, Jesus is going to save me, you know, and then he drowns, and he's like, Jesus, I thought you were going to save me. And he goes, I sent a raft, a Coast Guard boat, and a helicopter after you. What more do you want? You know, like, but it's, I don't know. I'm enjoying life, you know. I've always enjoyed life, but I think I have a different aspect maybe on it than some people. So it's like that freedom has a taste, the protected will never know. I certainly think that life has a taste. Those who've tasted death have a understanding of that not a lot of other people do. You know?
Yeah.
How close to the edge you can live without, you know, suffering permanent damage.
Yeah.
Because clearly this isn't permanent damage.
And you know a little bit of that taste, and it's something where you almost think to yourself, like, sometimes you wish other people could taste it, but at the same time you couldn't necessarily wish that on somebody, you know? So that's also a weird feeling.
Yeah. It is, you know, like, I share it with my daughter all the time. Like, we'll talk about, you know, about what tomorrow means and, like, where she is in life and how that relates and, you know, like, what she should take away from my service and that that can't be an excuse for her. I don't want her to join the military. I mean, I'll be right up front. Like, I'd be hard-pressed, I think, to, like, have a good career in the military today because I'm not really the kind that just keeps his mouth shut and, you know, 2 bags full of Roger, sir. Like, I'm quite opinionated, as my boss at work will tell you. But I don't know that I could make it in the military today, and I certainly don't want her to do it. I think she should finish what I started. Like, she's has a lot of that same gene, like, want to help people and science, especially related to medicine, comes natural for her and doesn't have to really study. So I'm trying to ensure that she doesn't do something silly like take some humanities or, you know, art appreciation.
There's a place for that, James. Come on now.
Yeah, it's called an elective.
It's when you got credits you need to fill so you can graduate early. Yeah.
Right. That is not a major.
Yeah.
That's a major mess up. That's what's majorly missing something. So,
well,
you have some questions? Like, I can see the wheels turning, smoke coming out of your ears. Like,
I guess the biggest one I want to take away, and I don't want to burn up the rest of the time, but at the moment of impact, when this went off, the fortitude and wherewithal that you exercised in order to look down and actually see the lower half of your limb departed, and then grab your tourniquet, loop it over, and get it going. How few people, I think, could execute that, and what that did, the ensuring survival at that point in time, is just crazy. And the fact that you were articulate throughout the whole thing, you remembered it. You mentioned on what it felt like to lasso your leg, and the pain, where so many other people would have dropped into a point of shock that they probably would have just folded at that point.
Right.
And pushing yourself backward through it, like, is it just innate in you, that fortitude, that wherewithal, that you maintain consciousness throughout that, and not just consciousness, but like active consciousness, like you're not paralyzed by stress and pressure at this point in time. Rather,
or was that trained into you?
Yes, I think it's a lot of things. Like, training is absolutely necessary. Like, you can't get there without it. You know, I mentioned, you know, when I teach about the dedication to whether you're applying a tourniquet to yourself, or you're practicing applying a tourniquet to somebody else, or you're practicing your draw stroke from concealment, or whatever the case is. You know, like, it takes roughly 10,000 repetitions in the conscious for something to begin to be imprinted in the subconscious. And you can't get there without training. But you can't get the training without the dedication to do it, because that stuff doesn't come easy. You know, like tourniquet application in kit, in that environment that you're expected to practice is time consuming. But if you're a student of war maybe, or a practitioner of war, like it was a necessity. Like I talk about with guys, and they carry a gun every day that doesn't carry medical stuff. I'm like, you're a bonehead. Like, you know, like you're preparing for mortal combat with another human being, and you're so cocky that you're assured that you're going to come out on the upright end of this thing. Like, I'm pretty assured of what I know and what I can do, but I'm not that assured. Like, I carry a tourniquet every day on me, and a little IFAC and a wallet with a chest seal and some combat gauze. But it takes, and we've talked about this about law enforcement. Like, this is one of the places that where I think people are failing law enforcement, that they don't have a realization of how close they run the edge. You know, people are like, I go to work every day, and I'm an SRO in a school. It's never going to happen here. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. Minimum qualifications on the PT test. You know, they're not prepared to make a difference in anybody else's life. And that's the difference. Because you can't be dedicated to making a difference and not make a difference.
Tracking.
That's well articulated. I like that. But I enjoyed every minute of this personally.
Oh, if there's ever been a worthwhile one.
Yeah, I don't think we ever got to the life and the day of a special operations medic.
Yeah, so far it sounds
life
compressed.
in a day.
It sounds compressed in about 16 minutes right now. So just to give listeners an idea of what a day in the life would go, you've given me a 16-minute snapshot of
what a day in my life was.
Yeah, correct. Like, you guys think
like we didn't even get into the some of the fun stuff. Like, we talked about the long distance thing, and like, I laugh about this quite often, but like, we'd gotten RPG'd one day, and my team sergeant had gone to Kandahar to see the command, talk about some stuff. And while he was gone, you know, catch the way the mice will play. And dude messed with the team a little bit too much. And I'm like, I've had enough of this crap. Like, that dude's time for him to die. And went and got told my team leader, I'm like, hey, you know, pulled a little 5 W's. Hey, me and these guys are going to go do this thing, and we'll be back in a little bit. If I don't come back, this is where I won't be. So, but this will be where I was. And so we go outside. I get everybody together, and I'm like, where are we going to go to get some elevation? And I'm standing looking at this tower that's been erected to put a camera on, a day-night camera. And I'm like, oh, that's about 75 feet tall. So I go grab a spool of 550 cord, tie a bowline in the end of it, tie it around the 300 Win Mag, put my war belt on with my helicopter tether, aircraft tether, and start scaling the tower. Get up about
tree stand on steroids.
75 feet. Wrap the tether around, clip it in like I'm a telephone operator, like about to call somebody on this, you know, tower, and pull it up, stick the rifle through the rungs of the tower, and take a shot, and it's like, so we doing this number. I'm like, wow, like, it's going to be a minute before this stops. You know, like, I'm going to have to make a better shot at this, because there's not going to be a follow-on shot if I miss, you know, we call it second round corrections, right? And so this dude's still lobbing RPGs. The commander called in air weapons teams, which is helicopters. So they come buzzing by probably 200 meters from the tower, and the lead helicopter clearly saw me because he's like, and then he turns the helicopter and starts flying around the tower in a circle like this, and gets over at about my 2:30, and I turn and look at him with the rifles like this, and I'm still rocking, and I'm like, just keep rocking till it stops, And so it finally stops. Grab the rangefinder, range the guy again, do some quick math, come up with a firing solution, wait for him to stick his head back out, time it, goes to stick his head back in. I timed like the average that his head was in before he sticks it back out and sent the round. And he sticks his head out, and the round strikes the concrete wall right next to his face, completely obliterates his face. One of the helicopters is pointed at me. The other one is pointed at the target. And so the command was watching the entire thing in Kandahar with my team sergeant like this.
He's not there.
He's like, oh, my God. Like, clearly I cannot leave this guy alone. Like, but the whole rotation was like that. Like, if I found a solution to fix that problem so I could keep I said I was a lazy medic. Right? Like, I'd rather shoot dudes that are messing with my dudes than have to patch my dudes. Like, I consider that being a good dude. Right.
You're a preemptive medic. Right. Yeah, very proactive.
Right. So I
holistic
whacked a few dudes. Like, I got some
address
good
the
video.
problem, not just the side effects.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Don't address the
completely
symptoms.
Agree. We're rocking back and forth. Like, that was the last shot I took there. Like, the rifle down. I'm like, I'm gonna get my ass chewed. I'm going to get my butt chewed. I'm like, crawl down off the thing. I no longer get inside. The phone rings. Hey, put James on the phone. I'm like, beautiful. He's like, hey, good shot. Click. And then hangs the phone up. Click. That was it. I'm like, whoo.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I had some good, we were on a few weeks earlier, we were out doing a KLE or key leader engagement, And my team sergeant didn't really like he liked being a team sergeant, but he really wanted to stay a team dude. And so any chance he had to be on the roof with me behind glass, that's where we were. Like, I mean, we're still like great friends. And I don't know, I mean, clearly wouldn't be here today without him. But so we're on this roof, and I think we've talked about it. I've shared this story with you, but we're on this roof, and I hear, and like I just poke my head up and I see an RPG go and miss the roof where we are. Well, the team leader and some other people underneath, like having their little meeting, and like we're perched up on this parapet wall, he's laying in the prone looking through a hole in the wall, and I've got a tripod set up, and I'm sitting Indian style just looking through the glass, and then I hear, and then I see like the RPG crest, and then come back down, and it hit the wall right underneath where we are, collapse the wall. We go sliding down the wall into a pile of rubble. Everybody's like, "Yeah, everybody okay?" And then you hear boop, 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 boop. And it's one of the vehicles, armored vehicles with a 5th cal on it, with a dude sitting in it with like a video game where he turns and the cameras just move with him.
Yeah.
Right? Or the screens move. Yeah. Right? And he's wearing these dudes out about 400 meters away with a 50 cal. Like guys are trying to hide behind a donkey. He's sending rounds through the donkey. Like, donkey's like, falls over, Guy comes in 2 days later with a wheelbarrow with half of a donkey on a wheelbarrow, wanting some money for it. I'm like, I don't know what happened to that donkey. That's clearly not something we did. But, I mean, it was like the whole rotation was like that. I mean, it was the Wild West. Like.
That it is.
Yeah. Got blown out of the bed one night. Like the compound we lived in had it was an Afghan house where an SF guy had been killed earlier. His team leader had decided to put a village stability operation in that town. There's no tactical advantage to being there at all. It was a FU to Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. That's all it was. Like, we're going to put dudes in the meat grinder and try to give you the FU at the same time. Like, Like, it was a horrible decision, command decision. But was what it was, 2 bags packed, Roger, sir. And this is messed up. I can't believe we're but where was I going with this?
Yep,
The compound. So it was a compound. Well, on the outside of the compound, they had put like 16, 18-inch mud walls, and then they put Hescos, which are those square 4-foot by 6-foot boxes they fill with gravel, right? And so they put a couple of those. Well, this guy in the middle of the night, he crawls up and puts a satchel charge on the side of the wall. Just so happens to be like, and the on the inside of that wall is where like we had some, I don't want to say offices, but like the aid station, right? And so you walk into the aid station, it was like a litter stand / OR, makeshift OR, and some other stuff. Well, in the back, you walk through a door, and that's where I slept. Well, my bunk was on the wall that he put the charge on, blows me off of my bed against the wall that was built, and then I'm like, onto the ground. I'm like, wow, that was interesting. Like, blows like a 3-foot hole in the wall. I'm like, this is sporty. Like, that was like 2 days after we were there. Like, got in a gunfight. Like, got off the helicopter. 20 minutes later, I was in a gunfight. Like, sitting up on a, like, side-by-side, like, waiting for, like, the way we got our supplies is they'd fly a C-130 and just push the stuff out the back.
Sure.
Parachute it, bring it down. We go out, collect it up, get in a firefight while we're trying to collect our stuff. They're trying to run us off so they can collect our stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm standing there, and I hear the terp, and
It's kind of like rugby.
right.
Okay. Yeah.
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 So I hear
With guns.
the terp and a couple of the Afghans talking, and like they start talking and they go down into a bomb crater, right, from a 500-pound bomb. And I'm like, what are y'all doing down there? And they're like, oh, we're about to get fired on over there from about 500 meters away. I'm like, where? He just points and he's like, oh, over there, like, inshallah, like wherever they are. And I'm like, I think we'll be all right. So me and the senior engineer from the team, his name's Dave, start laughing about something. I don't remember exactly what it was, and I heard in the distance. And then it's like, ding, 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 like stuff, like, I'm like, somebody dropped some, like, bottle rockets or something right here at my feet, And then it happened a second time, and it was like right past the head. It's like zip, 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 zip. Both of us are trying to do a happy dance to get around the back of this side by side, and a spare tire hanging off the back of it, and both of us trying to curl behind it. He's just as big as I am, and like you can't get one grown man behind a rear tire.
Yeah.
By one of those things, much less two grown soft dudes, and so. I finally got leaned up over the dash, took a knee, and I'm like, I think I've got him. And then he takes a couple shots, and then I let one off, and that was the last he let anything else go, except for he might have let some urine go out of his bladder when he got hit, but that was it. Like I smoked that dude straight up. Like, I'm not one of those dudes who are like, yeah, it's a headshot, like trying to call her shot. I'm like, I hope I hit that guy, right? Like, I think my math was right, but, like trying to do a 10-inch drill on a dude whose head keeps doing this is a little daunting.
Yeah.
Like, but, yeah, it was a Wild West. There's a video of
Sounds
both
like
of us trying to do the happy dance, get behind that side by side. I'm like, I don't know what y'all talking about. I wasn't doing happy dance. Like, I had my, like I was completely composed.
Incredible.
But, yeah, It's, that's just one of the trips, but
yeah,
I've had a very interesting career, and
to say the least,
thankful for every minute of it.
Right on. Well, that was some good stuff. That was a fantastic cast. Appreciate you joining us for this one.
Oh,
it's been excellent. So
can't imagine being anywhere else.
Thanks everybody out there for listening as well. Hopefully you enjoy this one just as much as we did sitting here. Yeah, how do you follow that? This is
get trained.
One of the,
get trained.
Get trained.
It can save your life.
That it can. Yeah, that's actually a good thing to fall back on.
Big lesson today.
Yeah.
Surround
yourself with people that are as dedicated to keeping themselves and others alive as you are.
Yep. I like that. And on that note, we will end. Thanks again, guys, for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks
We'll
for
catch
having us.
everybody on the next one. All right. Bye.
See ya.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.